Hello humans, today I want to talk about this guy right here. This is a buck knife that I picked up on a recent trip to my local hunting supply store. Very simple packaging. This is the button. This is not the button lock large, I don't think. Maybe it is. We have our standard legal notice. Be aware of your laws, make sure you're not breaking them. Our Proposition 65 warning: this product can expose you to nickel metallic, which is known in the state of California and pretty much nobody else, to cause cancer and birth defects or other reproductive harm. If I remember, which I should because I'm doing this and saying this now, I'm going to flash what the actual Proposition 65 for metallic copper is, or not metallic copper, metallic nickel is, because I don't think it's going to be that interesting. Anyway. This is the last one that they had on stock. As usual for me, I always end up getting the last one that they have in stock, but what can I say? I go in at weird times. We have our Buck product card. Really good warranty, especially on their US products, but even their international products, they have really good warranty. And message from the Buck family. No real feelings about that. This is definitely a Chinese-made Buck knife. And a plastic dog poo bag. Recycle, burn, do what you do with the cardboard. Dog poo bag is basically the minimum amount of plastic you can actually get away with. Wow. Oh, I like that branding just right there on the pocket clip, that stamping. I think this looks really, really clean on a stainless steel handle. So this is, of course, a button lock. This is the 743. We have sort of this, some people are going to call that a reverse Tonto. I'm going to call that a straight clip point. Blade, hollow grind, fairly deep on this fairly small knife. This is actually a really comfortable small knife. And then we have our button. Oh, I just noticed. Hold on. Flicks out really nice, but it needs just a little bit extra, maybe some lube on the bearing or something. But the thing that distracted me and got me really excited, the tooling head is off the show side scale, which is super cool. Buck's kind of 50-50 on that. Sometimes they do like jeweled, or they put their logo on that and then they show it, and sometimes they just have the machined heads on the show side for no apparent reason. Which is, in my opinion, a little bit unfortunate, but he's a cute little guy. Flicks out really nicely. Stainless steel handle. It's quite comfortable. It's not contoured, but it is knocked down in very intelligent ways, which is pretty cool. We have a fairly deep carry pocket clip. I mean, that's not leaving very much out of the pocket, but still, I can definitely see the argument on something like this to put it as far back as absolutely possible. So potentially even using that screw. I mean, it's such a small knife anyways, you're not really going to be using it for any type of hard work, or most people who wear gloves won't carry something like this because it's too small for work that requires gloves in a lot of instances. But that is well made. We have significant milling out the inside by the looks of it. I don't know how well that can be seen. Which is quite nice. Button is comfortable. Rockets on the reverse flick, look at that. We have a fairly close to full height hollow grind, but this isn't a very tall blade, and it is, I mean, it's not thick by any means, but it is a little bit thicker than you might expect. So the geometry on this could prove to be interesting. Lockup feels completely solid, which is good. That's nice. I'm liking these sort of mushroomed thumb studs where they're smaller barrel and they get wider there, just because the bottom of my nail catches it so much easier. It's just a lot softer. It is requiring, this is definitely not drop shut action. Is it riding on bearings? It looks like it, yeah, so it might just need some lubricant in there or something. That's different. So we have a traditionally located stop pin right there, but if it will focus, you can see there's actually milling on the inside for what looks like a secondary pair of internal, but I don't see them. So I have no idea why that milling is up there. That is definitely interesting. One position pocket clip inset, which is pretty cool, but it is still only a one position pocket clip. And a lot of this, it's not contouring, but shaping for the hand also appears to be only on one side. Which, I mean, not great, but it's definitely not uncomfortable. This is a very much a right-hand bias knife, but I guess that is what you get. Let's test our factory edge real quick. Okay. There's at least one spot where it's a little bit wonky, but that is quite nice. It's okay. It's acceptable. This is pretty much that bar for me, like exactly a 5 out of 10. But let's see how it feels. Right there. Right there. Yeah, right there, there's a little bit of roughness. I'm not entirely sure what's causing it, but there is. Yeah, it feels like just a minor QC issue, and given the fact that I can actually feel the burr that is causing it, a quick stropping will take that out, and it will be right as rain again. I'm gonna guess that this is gonna be pretty good at puncturing and not great at slicing, but let's find out. So we do have, yeah, it is a little bit of a thicker blade for the amount of space it has to taper down. Like, that is fairly wedgy, but it is still incredibly easy to poke with this thing. Like, you can see it just sinks in. Very little effort. That's nice. And then the reason why I'm predicting that it's going to do poor in the slicing test is just because this is a fairly aggressive hollow grind and there's not lots of room to drop down. But we'll see how bad the shouldering is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Even when I start the cut outside of that kind of wonky area, it is not amazing. And a lot of that is just feeling that shouldering hit so early, because this is not a very long blade, right? Like, if I take this and I cut it this way, that's fine. That is not bad whatsoever. But if I try to cut the long way, it just gets caught up on that shouldering, and then it's quite a bit more noticeable. But for a small knife like this, it is absolutely not going to be a problem, right? Like, this is a small office carry kind of a feel. It does look really good. It is going to be an absolute fingerprint magnet, though. One second. All bright and shiny like that. It is an absolute fingerprint magnet, but for a little office knife or something like that, you're not really going to need those long slices, in my opinion. So I think for what it is setting out to do in this size bracket, it is pretty good. I'll carry it for a bit and I'll get more complete feelings, but my immediate thought is, for a small little kind of light use knife, I am kind of liking it. It is really comfortable in the hand. Like, for such a, like, this feels like a small knife, and I'm still getting a fairly comfortable 4-finger grip. Straw is definitely not big enough for a finger, though, just a little bit of a sharpening tool. A very accessible tip, which is nice. If your hands are a little bit bigger than mine, I mean, even mine, if I try to bear down, my pinky slips off. But if I'm just holding it lightly for a cut or whatever, I can very comfortably get all my fingers on there and just slice, feed bag or whatever. Very rockety action off the thumb studs. That is very sure of itself, which is quite pleasant. Centering is good, and look at, this is something I always really appreciate. Look at how minimal that gap is. Like, that fits in there really well. Beautiful centering, like I said. I'm going to carry this guy for a couple of weeks on and off, just get a feel for it. But initial impressions are cautiously optimistic. And for, what was it, like 63 bucks or whatever, I am definitely not unhappy with that. Keep in mind that 63 after taxes and all the other bull crap that I have to pay as a beautiful resident of British Columbia, Canada. But yeah, first thoughts, I'm kind of liking it, and I definitely dig the blade shape. So I'll be back in just a minute. And we are back. So I've been playing with this guy for a couple weeks on and off. As you can see, it's been a little bit scratched up. And I like this. I actually really like this. But first thing first, I'm going to get into my few complaints over the past week. First thing first, this is an absolute fingerprint magnet. That's going to matter various amounts to you, whether or not that matters at all. But quite frankly, in the environments where this isn't going to get scratched to crap, you want it to look nice. And it's not going to look nice because it's going to be covered in fingerprints and hand oil all the time. And like, you can even see all the kind of smudginess and crap like that this thing has picked up. Let me just try to wipe that off. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere, but yeah, it helped out a little bit. The other thing is this kind of satin finish on the body of it definitely shows scratches off. There's no real way around that. That's just kind of the way that it is, but you can very clearly see that, yeah, the body does get scratched up a bit, which, you know, it is what it is. It's not the end of the world, and it's definitely not something I'm going to mind, but that is something to be aware of. It has 7CR 18 MOV blade steel, which is very entry level. It's about it's one of Buck's common blade steels, and it's not something I'm going to be annoyed or upset about. It works just fine, and yeah, for like 60 bucks, I have no opinions about seeing it in the $60 range. I've seen better, I've seen worse. It is what it is. Action is actually really nice. It did take a little bit to break in, but now that it has broken in, drops shut beautifully, flicks out actually really well. Yeah, I quite like this. One thing I will say is this last little section, as you can see, it kind of gets stuck right there. If you give it just the slightest bit of a tap in when you go to close it though, it just flicks shut, so that's not a huge issue as long as it doesn't bounce. Yeah, Hollow Grind made this feel very slicey, and for what feels like a smaller knife for sure, right? It's very easy to access the tip. It's very easy to access that belly section, and it does slice quite well, even though it does have a thicker blade for this short of a blade. The biggest props I can give it though are these thumb studs. I love these thumb studs. Let me get up close there, and then you can see they have sort of this mushroom cap to them, which means that when you put your nail underneath it, no matter what type of a nail you have, it's actually really easy to get your nail underneath that little ledge, and then flicking it is just so much easier. It's even the reverse flick. You can get the tip of your nail underneath there, and then it catches. So if you're teaching somebody how to use thumb studs, like my sister is incredibly bad with thumb studs. I know she watches these sometimes, so I'm referring to you. My sister's very bad with thumb studs. This knife, I think it took her like 3 tries, and she was flicking it fairly consistently, which for her is an absolute accomplishment, right? These are super easy to learn on. They're super easy and intuitive to use, in large part because there's no way to slip off them. There's no way to use them weird. It's literally just catch your thumb, catch the edge of your nail on the lip and flick. You can even do it pretty, like I'm pushing mostly outwards, and it's flicking really nice, which super huge props to Buck. They haven't done a lot of manual button locks, if any, before this, so this is definitely an accomplishment. Yeah, in the pocket, it was really nice. I will say the fact that one side, this is a very right-hand bias knife. One of the big ways that is apparent, other than, you know, button lock, is the fact that the actual handle scales are different. The back handle scale is a lot flatter. The front handle scale has, it's not contouring, but just like some milling to it to give it some dynamic feel. And I find it quite comfortable. I'm not typically one for asymmetric designs, but to be honest, I quite like this. There's no, as a result of that kind of milling and patterning, there's no pocket clip position on the back side, which I don't love, but it is what it is. There's no real way around that. And for 90% of people, I guess it's okay. I don't like that excuse. There should be a left-handed version of this. Even if you only make 10% the number of them, there should be a left-handed version of this. I know plenty of people who use their right hand to hold stuff up and their left hand to cut, or it's just more practical to keep their knife on their left front pocket instead of the right front pocket, so they use their left hand more. Even if you're right-handed, there's a use case for having a left-handed button lock. So I don't fully agree with the argument that we don't really need it, but, and button locks are super easy to manipulate with either hand. And again, because of these thumb studs, even with my offhand, which doesn't get a lot of practice, it doesn't take a lot. This, I think, is the first time that I'm trying to manipulate this with my left hand, and it's working quite well for me. Try to reverse flick. Yeah. So, super usable with the left hand, but it is definitely not designed to be used by left-handed people. Let's get some size comparisons out of the way. Here it is next to, I knocked some stuff over. Here it is next to the Wii Banter. And this VV Chevalier. As you can see, it is smaller than the Wii Banter, putting this into the small, what I consider to be at least a small knife. And despite that, it has a very, very similar usable handle length to the Wii Banter, which means that it feels slightly bigger. The handle at the very least feels slightly bigger than it actually is, which is quite a nice effect, but it is still definitely a small knife. And here it is next to the Buck 110. And, oh no, I forgot my regular Zippo. Let's use you. Yes, that was the sound of me knocking over some lighters. Do not worry too much about it. Here it is next to a Buck 110 and a Zippo. As you can see, it is very, very much smaller than the Buck 110. Thickness. This is going to be deceptively thick, I think. Yeah. As you can see, it's definitely thinner than the Buck 110, but it is a lot thicker than it feels in hand. In large part, I think, because of the pocket clip. The pocket clip doesn't really make for a hot spot in the hand, even without my ring on. Yeah, it doesn't make a hot spot at all in the hand, but it does definitely increase the thickness feeling, which has its benefits and its drawbacks. And then thickness next to our Zippo. It is actually slightly thicker than the Zippo, not by much, but ever so slightly thicker than the Zippo. Do with that information what you will. Blade thickness. Aha. I don't need fractions. I don't want millimeters. There we are. And oh wow, it's only like 105,000. So it is actually a thin blade. It doesn't necessarily feel like a thin blade, but it is actually a fairly thin blade, which is pretty cool. For hardware, it's going to be T8 pivot screw and T6 body screws, which is pretty well what you can expect. I mean, I'd like T8s all around, but I can understand the T6 body screws. I like it. I think that the full-size version... I think there should be a full-size version and an XL version. It's really nice in the smaller size, and I think that if it came in like a 4.5 inch, like a proper XL version, it would feel a little bit like a Cutlass just because of the blade design and the handle design. But I think both the small and the regular are going to make very, very pleasant EDC knives. It works very well. I think it's a little bit over what I would recommend for blade length when it comes to traveling. Let me just double check that. We're doing back of the napkin math here, but the cot that pulls you over is going to be doing back of the napkin calculations too. 2.5 inches. Okay, so most places it would be okay. It's definitely longer than I personally like when I'm traveling, but I typically use removable blade knives anyways because I tend to travel without a check bag. So it's going to be legal a lot of places where you can have a one-hand opening locking knife, which is actually not a lot of places if you're traveling in Europe. But yeah, if you need something under that 3-inch mark, this absolutely feels good. I find it quite comfortable in the hand. It's very manipulatable. I had no negative experiences carrying this, and I think that this is a great knife, especially for somebody who's kind of new to button lock knives, new maybe to thumb studs, hell, new to knives generally. I think that this is a really, really good option for those people. Yeah, especially in the smaller format, I think it would be something that you could definitely give to a kid or a younger teenager as kind of a first carry knife for them. It wouldn't be necessarily something that I would recommend for like getting them into outdoorsmanship and bushcrafting. I definitely do think that there's better options even in the buck lineup for that. But if you're looking more like day-to-day life, you know, daily carry, this is absolutely a good option. And both the stainless steel and the carbon fiber versions I think are very good looking. I think there's a third version. I'm not 100% on that though. If there is, it'll be up there. If not, I won't put it up there. But yeah, hollow grind, easy to maintain, entry-level steel for sure, but it is going to teach you how to maintain a steel. I do definitely think that the person I recommend this to is somebody who's either getting into knives and wants their first button lock knife, or a parent who's looking for a first knife for a kid. Finger safe operation is definitely a little bit safer than a liner lock or a frame lock because your fingers are never in the path of the blade, yada yada yada. Yeah, and it's something you can maintain and keep and grow into with time and extended periods of time. So if you're looking for a first folder or even a first knife, I do think that this absolutely should appeal. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. In the time that I've had it, it stayed perfectly in center. I have taken the pivot out and messed with it a little bit, just to check out, because I thought the interior milling was kind of cool. But yeah, it held center perfectly. Like I haven't had any issues with centering or anything like that in the time that I've been using it. It's nice. Buck does a good job, generally speaking. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. I really do like this thing. I think that a lot of people who pick it up will like it. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.